Hello everyone. Today we are going to discuss about first chapter economy introduction. So in give a second. The first chapter is economy introduction. In that, in view second economics, we have divided into part one and part two. The first part is all about microeconomics, and second part is about macroeconomics. So, in microeconomics, first chapter is economy. What about economy and all the concepts about economy? Introduction to economy. So here, what do you mean by economy? The economy is the total of all the activities related to production and consumption of limited resources by a group of participants. So here in economy we can see production and consumption. There are producers who produce goods and services and consumers who will consume the same goods and services. So while producing and consuming the produced goods and services, there are restrictions because we have always a resource, limited resource. So whatever resources we have, we will produce the goods and accordingly will distribute in the society. So here, for example, a farmer who produces corn, uh, for example, he has a 1 acre of land and he produces 2 tons of corn. So he has a resource that is land and which is very limited. He has only 1 acre. So and he can produce 2 tons of corn. So whatever he produces, 2 tons of corn, he can't consume everything by himself. So he will use part of the production for himself, and he needs other goods and services like he needs food, shelter, and clothing, health, education, and so on. So, when he has 2 tons of corn, for example, he can't use everything. He only uses a portion of the produced goods, and the rest of the corns he will sell in the market, and whatever he gets in return, he will spend for buying other food items, groceries, and for his shelter and clothing. He has to save money for his health issues in future and for education as well for his kids. So he has to manage everything in this produced goods. So when we say goods and services, in production, we can see two things. Where either we are producing goods or services. What do you mean by goods? Goods are tangible physical objects which are used to satisfy the wants and needs of the consumer. So when we say goods, those are tangible and physical objects. So we can use those goods to satisfy the wants and needs of the consumer. For example, we can say whatever physical objects we see, groceries that come in the food, then clothing, leather products, machineries, etc. These are physical in nature and we can see these are tangible. So these we can say goods, and when we call services, services are intangible in nature and we use to satisfy customers' needs and wants. So what are these services? For example, educational institution, education profession, doctors, hotels, transportation, railways we can say, etc. So these are intangible in nature and that we call as services. So goods are tangible, physical in object, and services are intangible. Education, doctor, hospitals, hotels, transportation, these comes under services, and goods, foods, clothing, leather products, machineries, etc. comes under goods. So when we say each individual can use her own resources to fulfill her needs, but no individual has unlimited resources compared to her needs. So here an individual, he has the resources and he has his own wants and needs. So, having these resources, he can't fulfill all his wants and needs because he has resources are limited. With limited resources, he can't fulfill all his wants and needs. For example, in our example, farmer, he produced corn, and his wants are other food items, and he needs clothing and shelter, education, and he needs to look after his health and so on. So, when he has 2 tons of corn, he can't use all the corns to fulfill these needs. That's why what he does, he will consume portion of the corn, for example, 50 kg he will use for himself, and the leftover corn he will sell, and whatever amount he will get, he will use to buy these needs and wants. But always, as we said, no individual has unlimited resource compared to our needs. So, no individual has unlimited resources so that he can fulfill all his wants and needs. As resources are limited, he can only fulfill few of his wants and needs. We can say with an example, Suppose a farmer with 1 acre of land, he produces 2 tons of corn. So what he'll do, he wants, there is a difference between want and need. He wants to buy a bike, and his basic needs, food, health, clothes, education, all are there. So his resources are very limited. With this, he can only satisfy his basic needs, food, health, clothes. And he has to choose between whether he wants to go for bike or better education for his children. So with limited resources, he can't fulfill all his wants. So he has to sacrifice his dream about bike, and he can give better education to his children. So that is why no individual has unlimited resources, so that he can fulfill all the needs and wants of him. So the same with all the individuals and the society, and it is the same situation in the economic system. Who is an individual? Individual is the individual decision making unit. We can say who makes the decision here. A single person or a firm or institution, organization. These are decision making units. We can call them as individuals. So in our family, if a father is taking a decision, he is the individual who takes a decision. A firm who is producing the goods and services, if the individual firm is taking decision, then we can call that firm as an individual. And the same way, institution. We can take example of our college, RB. So here, RB college is taking decisions. So this institution, we can say it as individual. And we saw what you mean by goods and services and who is an individual. Now, when we talk about resources, what do you mean by resources? Resources means these are goods and services which are used to produce other goods and services. So resources means these are also goods and services, but we will use these goods and services to produce other goods and services. For example, land, tools, machineries. These are the resources we have, and using these resources we can produce goods and services. Using lands, we can produce food items. Tools are used in factories. Machinery is also used in manufacturing unit. So these are the resources we have. We can say labor also. Labor is also a resource. So we will use this resource in producing goods and services. So we can call all these things as a resource. So when we say there is a production and consumption, there should be some compatibility. So what do you mean by compatibility? There has to be some compatibility between the people in society collectively want to have and what they produce. So it means that there has to be some compatibility between the people in the society collectively, what they want to have and what they produce. So there should be a compatibility between what they are producing and then what they need. There should be a match between the want and the production. For example, the corn produced, the quantity of corn production should match with the demand for the corn. So, suppose as a society, if we are producing 100 tons of corn, there should be a same demand for the corn. So, even the society should need same 100 tons of corn. So this compatibility should be there. Then only we can say this is a balanced economy. But in reality, it should not happen. The economy is very complex in nature, and we cannot find the same compatibility in a society where production and the demand for the produce is same. So what happens here? Suppose the corn produced is 100 tons and the society required only 80 tons. So what we can do is the 80 tons we can supply to the society and rest of the 20 tons of corn we can use this in the other production of goods and services. We can use same corn, the netted corn in other goods production. Suppose if the production is of 100 tons and if the society's demand is for 120 tons, what we can do is here we are producing 100 tons, but there is a demand for 20 more tons of corn. In that way, whatever the resources available in the society, we are involving so many other activities in production and consumption. So we can use those resources and utilize here. We can utilize the other resources to produce 20 more tons of corn. For example, if we have a 10 acres of land and we can produce 100 tons of corn, but there is a demand for 120 tons of corn, then what we can do? We can use other resources. For example, if 5 acres of land is used to produce cotton, and there is less demand in the market for cotton, with these 5 acres, if we are producing 2 tons of cotton and demand in the society for 1.5 tons, then there is a less demand in the market for cotton and we are using 5 acres to produce the cotton. So we can use the resource from here to produce 20 more extra tons of corn. So here we can use 3 acres for cotton production and we can use the left of 2 acres here to produce this extra demand, to meet this extra demand. The total we are using 12 acres land to produce 120 tons of corn. So in this way, we need to check whether what we produce and what is the demand in the society. If both things are matching, we can say there is a compatibility between the people's want and what they produce. If it is not matching, we can reallocate the resources and try to balance the production and consumption. The next topic is central problems of an economy. What do you mean by central problems of an economy? So there are economic activities they are production, exchange and consumption. So these are the economic activities where we see production, and whatever we produce, we exchange the production, and there is a consumers who will consume what we produce. So we can say this as a trade. Buying and selling process happens here. So they will buy the produced goods by paying the money, and that money they can again utilize in the production process. These are the economic activities, and there are some central problems in the economy when these activities are happening. So what are those? You can see here. In the course of these basic economic activities, every society has to face scarcity of resources. Scarcity of resources, and it is the scarcity of resources that gives rise to problem of the choices. The following. So when we have the scarcity of resources, we face the problems. So what are those problems? So when we see we are producing and there are consumers consuming the produced goods, but while producing, as I said previously, the consumption of goods, whether what to produce, when we have this question, whether we need to concentrate more on consumption goods or to invest more on goods like machines and manufacturing units. So this problem will face while producing. We can say whether we need to invest on whether we need to produce on consumable goods, or whether we need to invest on the machineries where it helps us to produce more and more goods. Consumable goods are direct goods which consumers directly consume, but if we invest on the machineries and all, in future it helps us to produce more goods. But here we will face the problem whether we need to directly go with the production and meet the consumer needs, Otherwise, we need to invest on the technology or the machinery so that it will increase the production. These kind of problems we will face when there is a scarcity of resources. And the other problem is, how are these goods produced? So how to produce these goods? It means that whether we use more laborers or machineries. So how to produce these goods using more laborers or machinery? So these kind of questions arise while producing the goods with limited resources. So we are face this question for whom we need to produce the goods. The first thing is what to produce, in what quantity, and second, how are these goods are produced. How we can produce this using labors or machineries, and in which quantity we need to produce, and for whom we need to produce these goods. So who gets how much, who will get how much, and how should the produce of the economy be distributed among these individuals in the economy? Whether or not elementary education and basic health services should be available freely for everyone in the society. So whom we need to produce? There are elementary demands like education and health. So these things are required for all the every individual. We need to focus on these people who need education and health facilities, which are basic in nature, and we need to concentrate on these guys. And few are like luxurious products, we can say wants, and few consumers are there. They have some wants like luxurious bungalows, cars, and all these things. Whether we need to satisfy the need of these people, or whether we want to concentrate on the people who want these kind of luxurious products, for whom we need to produce the goods more in number of basic things, or to satisfy the wants of the consumer. So these are the questions arise: what to produce and how much in the quantity, and how to produce. What first thing is what to produce, how to produce, whom to produce. These are the questions arise when we do the production activity. So, what we need to produce, as we discussed, whether we need to produce the consumables or the on the image of the machineries. How to produce, whether what to produce is consumable or machineries, and how to produce, whether using labors or machine. Machine here we can say investment on technology. whether using labors or machinery we need to produce, and whom to produce, whether the needy people or who wants the luxurious products. So these are the questions arise when we involve in the economic activities. So, to summarize what we discussed in the today's class, we can say what we learned. What do you mean by economy? Economy is the total of all the activities related to production and consumption using the available resources by group of people. So, whatever the activities related to production and consumption using our available resources, we can say economy. And in production, we can see production of goods and services. Goods means they are tangible and physical in nature, used to satisfy the wants and needs of the consumer, and services are intangible in nature. And whoever produces an individual having the limited resources whatever he produces using his limited resources, he cannot satisfy his all his wants and needs. So when we have our resources limited, our consumption capacity also restricted, limited to certain extent. So we need to sacrifice on few of the things because there is a limitation in the resources. So we can say no individual has unlimited resources compared to their needs and wants. So who is an individual? Individual is a decision-making unit who takes decision. We can say single person or a firm or an organization or individual person. And when we say resources, resources means these are again goods and services. Goods and services which we use in producing other goods and services like land, labors, machineries, tools we use in production of many other goods and services. So we can call these as the resources. So, and also we discussed there should be a compatibility between the want in the society and the supply. We can say the demand. Demand, and here is supply and the demand. So if producing 100 tons of corn, there should be demand for the same. If it is less, then we need to utilize the left out corn in other activities, in producing other goods and services. If it is more, then we can utilize other resources to produce this extra demand, to meet this extra demand. So then only we can have, we can say there is a compatibility between whatever is supplying and what is the demand. But in reality, in society, we can't see the equality between the supply and the demand. So it is mainly because there is a limited resources. So we need to be very smart and select the best goods and services with our available resources. So we can say an example of all of you saw the movie Bahubali, right? In that Amrendra Bahubali. So he has limited resources compared to Ballard. So what he does, he uses all when there is attack from the enemy, he uses all the targets and he uses that storm. He throws towards army, enemy army, and he will find out it travels at what distance. So if this is the distance, so we can use whatever he prepared red blanket that he can use when army crosses this point. So with using this limited resources, it destroys the army. So we can say this is the utilization of resources. Even though we have a scarce of resources, we can utilize in a better way to tackle our problems. This is for the day, and we can discuss production possibility front end in the next class. Thank you.